We can call the meeting to order. I think we have a quorum, and therefore I would like to begin unless there's a real momentum against getting started. So I'll call the meeting to order. Did we send the sheet around the sign, Rolanda?
It's on that.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, great. Okay, well, I've counted up people. I'd like to ask Glenn to open up with a prayer. Do they, Glenn?
Our Father, we thank you for this group that's dedicating their time to come and do the right thing for this parish. We ask that you bless each one of us and have us take the parish interest to heart and not our own, and help us in making the right decision in Christ's name.
Amen. Okay. Rules of the meeting will be the same. Approval of the agenda items. Is there a motion to approve the agenda which is before you? So moved. Second. Mr. Hanneman moves. Mr. Olivo seconds. Is there any objection to approving the agenda? There being none, we'll go to the approval of minutes for the January 13 meeting as written. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Everybody ready? Okay, Mr. Sullivan moves to approve the minutes of the January 13 meeting as written. Any second? Second. Second by Mr. Olivo. Is there any objection? There being none, the minutes are approved. We'll go into the, there's no old business that I know of. New business, Mr. Scott Bird presentation. You, Mr. Bird?
Scott Bird.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome here. Let me ask the committee, you know Rachel, of course, because she invited you. Would you just pull a chair right up there in the middle, right there? Or where are you comfortable? Honestly, we're not.
It doesn't matter.
Well,
I'm comfortable
right
wherever
there.
you want me.
Okay. Well, you want to be on television because there's no telling what will come of your appearance for you. So that being the case,
I should have wore a hat.
I got one you can borrow.
through the intercession of Ms. Pearson, you've been invited here. I assume that you generally know what our mission is.
Sure.
Okay, you know, so that being said, Rachel graciously asked if we thought Mr. Bird ought to come and explain to us what they do in their parish, and I thought it would be a good idea. So without further ado, unless anybody has any other introductory remarks or anything, we could just get right to it.
Thank you for coming,
Yeah,
Scott.
appreciate it.
Well,
We've
thank you.
worked together for a couple
Thank
of
you.
years.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
And I appreciate all that you're doing to help.
Oh,
What I've done, actually, what I've prepared for you is Rachel's working with me on a project called Stronger Economies Together. You guys are familiar with that, right? Okay, so what I've done is I've created a little PowerPoint slide with a notes section, just to tell you a little bit about what we're working on that to start out with.
You want to do us one favor, since everybody, now go ahead and give us your full name for the record, your title, your address, and all that other sort of, what we call coordinates.
Sure. Okay, my name is Keith Scott Bird. Scott is spelled with one T and Bird is with a Y instead of an I. And I live at 7594 Anchor Drive in Ventress, Louisiana. So I couldn't be any closer to you guys without being here, except for that little stubborn river in the middle of the way of us. And my phone number where I can be reached is 225-240-2280. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the parish. I own a business in Point Coquille Parish. Also own a business down in Iberville Parish. We own a couple of Radio Shack franchises. I owned a number of other businesses prior to owning those businesses, but I divested myself in preparation for retirement about 3 years ago of everything else. And then after about a year of retirement, I realized that I would like to go back to work. And so I was going to volunteer my time as a favor to the Chamber of Commerce, to the then Economic Development Director, and subsequent to my offer to volunteer my time, I was asked if I would apply for the job. So There you go, you know. So, and I really enjoy it. I think part of everybody wants to do something good for the community that they care about. And so this is my way of trying to give back to the community. With that said, we'll go into this a little bit. SET stands for Stronger Economies Together.
Let me interrupt you only to say this. What I would like to have is you make a presentation, and then after that, we'll come back to questions from the committee.
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
And I'm happy, I just want you to be able to finish before you get interrupted.
Okay, all
Or by
right.
somebody like me.
Okay, sure. And I'll just go through it.
Sure.
I'm not going to take up a lot of your time to make this presentation right here. I just want to give you an overview
Okay.
of what it is that we're trying to do. And so SET was a part of a project that was put together by the American Reinvestment Act, and so Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And so it's administered through the USDA and Rural Development. And so the first question you have to ask yourself is, why regionally do you want to promote economic development? You know, and I know that West Feliciana has had their own economic development organization, and most of the parishes in the capital region are fortunate in comparison to many of the other parishes throughout the state, and that they have their own economic development organizations. Sometimes it's just as little as just one person, but it's important to have somebody who's leading that effort, even if it is just one person. I think we're fortunate in that regard, but you also want to look at that this is a global economy that we exist in today. And so in order to be competitive, we are, as rural communities, we're competing against metropolitan areas, which asset-wise have a lot more to offer than what we do. And so what we want to do is create a regional effort that incorporates Point Coupee, West Feliciana, and Zachary. We've talked about incorporating East Feliciana. You can think along the lines of the fact that the bridge creates a transportation corridor. It also opens up a larger labor market for all of the communities combined. And that transportation corridor extends through the Zachary Taylor Parkway, in which I am on the Zachary Taylor Parkway Commission as well. So I think that that's the mentality that you want to be thinking about, is that we are the North Capital Area region. And so it gives us more marketability. And so one of the things that people ask me, what is economic development? And so when I'm just talking off the cuff, a lot of times I'll tell people that the role of an economic development professional is pretty simple. It's to help people make more money. So if you're an individual and you're looking for a job, it's to help create jobs. And if you're a business, you're already providing jobs, you're an employer, it's to help you to be more successful so that you can provide more jobs. So it's, and so to give that a more formal definition, all of the components that make for a successful business endeavor are land, labor, capital, and technology. And so the definition that I prefer is that improving the quality and standard of living for an area by promoting the improved productivity of land, labor, capital, and technology. And so what you want to do is make the assets for your region more productive so that they are more competitive and they create more jobs. So development of new market opportunities is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So some of the tools that are used, and economic development has gone through several stages. One of the early stages was, just industrial recruitment. And some people have defined that as being like a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. You win, I lose. That there's only so many industries out there to be got. And so if I can attract one from you, a recent example of that was when we were trying to attract in our region, talking about our bigger, larger region, the capital area region, was the aircraft company. Okay? If they had come, we win, they lose. So that's an example of traditional industrial recruitment. And then it's moved on to talking about lean manufacturing and making everything more efficient. That was kind of the next wave, what we can do to do that. And then the new wave is regionalism. And the reason is because they've studied industry cultures, to see, and clusters, to see what it is that makes one particular area of the country stand out versus another. And these things happen due to various different reasons. You look at land, labor, capital, and technology. So Silicon Valley is a good example of the technology. So you had a lot of engineers that, descended in one area. And so it could continue to flow because the workforce was there. If you think about those 4 building blocks of business, which one is most important? Labor. Because if you're a business person, you can always buy more land. You can always borrow more capital. Okay? You can do a lot of things. You can acquire technology. But what you can't get is the workforce. If it's not there, then you have a problem. So that's one of the fundamental building blocks. And one of the things that we want to look at trying to improve with this regional economic development effort that we're going to create. So, so I use an example in here is that how to explain cluster analysis and spatial benchmarking, some of the tools that they talk about in current economic development. And it sounds like some fancy names, but basically it's just a matter of what is it in that region that makes you competitive in a particular area. And we're going to talk a little bit later about Louisiana Economic Development's Blue Ocean Strategy and how that ties into what I'm talking about here. But I give you a specific example that I think you guys can relate to, is that you guys have a paper mill here, okay? And the paper mill, you think about if something were to happen with it, okay, what do we do to grow our economy? Do we attract another paper mill? Well, one of the things that cluster analysis and spatial benchmarking looks at is that not just how the resources you have are make you competitive for another paper mill, but what else might they make you competitive for? And one example would be a biomass renewable energy plant, because they're the loggers and the trucking that supply the paper mill and a lot of the materials that supply the paper mill. Those are a lot of the same resources that would go into this next generation technology that's going to be where the jobs of the future are at. And so not just looking at the resources as they apply to what you have today, but what they might apply to make you competitive for the future. And and I give another example in this handout that we're not trying to recruit Microsoft to come here. What we want to do is create a business environment that allows the formation of the next Microsoft, which could happen right here. Why is Microsoft located in Oregon? Could be located anywhere, right? But that's where the guy who founded it likes to be. So if he founded it here and he was somebody from here, he might want to be here, right? So that's what we want to do, and we want to look at. I give some other examples of things that give us a competitive advantage, just for simplicity's sake. But I mean, we have a lot of water here. We need to look at water management and things that would give us a competitive advantage against other communities worldwide in that area. And so, I mean, we don't realize it yet, but water is going to be one of the greatest, most important resources of the future. It's in abundance now, but scarcity is on the way. And so we can be leaders in that. So just a couple examples. Another reason for going with the regional approach is that I think you can relate to this too, is that when you have just a localized approach and you have so much of your economic development efforts invested in one person or even one entity, okay, like the Community Development Foundation or Steve Jones, for example, okay, if something happens to that entity or that one person, it really puts a roadblock or a speed bump in your economic development efforts going forward. What you guys doing here is actually very proactive, because now working together, all of that responsibility is shared among several people instead of just having it invested in one person. And if you go with a regional approach, you not only get the advantage of you working with other regions and other economic development professionals to help keep moving your effort forward, but you also get the experience that comes from having multiple people involved in it, so that you're not limited to just whatever the experience is of that one person. You may have somebody who's really good with technology, and then you have another person who's good at understanding transportation issues. With the new corridor, transportation will probably be one of the areas that we can be more competitive in than we've been before. So, and you may actually have somebody who's good on these water management issues, but may not be so good on the technology side. So it's important to be diverse in the people that you bring in, and that's another reason why regionalism is so important. And it makes it more sustainable for the reasons that I mentioned. Finally, the last thing I mentioned was pretty obvious. Everybody's recognizing the effectiveness of regionalism. So that's where the money's going. So if you want to get some funding from the state or the federal government to move your efforts forward outside of what just your own resources are, that's the direction that you're going to need to go. So, of course, our team consists of, I got the names here, but just for the record, so far, working with USDA and rural development on the West Feliciana side is Ken Dawson, the parish president for West Feliciana, Ambrose Sims, who's the parish administrator, and Rachel Pearson, as y'all mentioned, and Lori Walsh, okay, who's the Main Street manager for St. Francisville. On the Point Capee side, there's myself, Jimmy Bello, who's our parish administrator, Matthew Wiggins, who's a business counselor with the Louisiana Business and Technology Center. Matthew's an MBA graduate, and he works with businesses, particularly innovative businesses, all the time. I think he's a tremendous asset. And we have David Chip Mills from Zachary, and I think some of you may have some familiarity with David Chip as he goes by. And he has some experience in planning and urban planning, so he's a big asset to the team as well. And then the assessment part, the steps, building the team, assess where you're at. These are just the same old stories about economic development in general. You first got to figure out who's the right people to have on the bus, okay? Then you got to figure out what it is that you have in your community that are assets, a SWOT analysis in essence, but mainly what your assets are that it makes you marketable. And then you got to develop a plan, a vision, set your goals, and then measure success as you're going to achieve your goals. And that is exactly what this program does. We have a lot of help, aside from just USDA and rural development. We have a lot of partners in the state who will be working with us, some really talented people across a multitude of different state agencies and organizations. So that concludes my presentation, and at this point,
Before we get into questions, I have a question, and I think all of the committee wants it. We're not the Economic Development Committee for this town. What we are is a committee established by the police jury to make recommendations to the police jury about how economic development should be handled and who should handle it. Let me back up and tell you, we used to have the Community Development Foundation, which was funded by a millage, and that money went to the Community Development Foundation, who in turn hired Steve Jones, for instance. And Steve was let go, and the Community Development Foundation no longer gets the money. The question is, for us, what do we recommend to the police jury to replace that and get this whole process going? So in lots of ways, you're way ahead of us. My question to you is, and then I'll be quiet, is what does Point Capee Parish do in terms of hiring or getting economic development going? Does the police jury hire you? Do you have a separate entity that's a foundation or a 50c3 corporation or what have you? Go into that just for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that, first off, you know, one of the reasons why you create a separate entity for economic development to start with, like a community development foundation, in our case, the way we did it, is we created a separate 501c. And it's called the Point Capee Economic Development Endeavor.
Okay.
And if you look up nonprofit agencies in Point Capee, you'll find it. And it's funded jointly by the Chamber of Commerce and the parish and the municipalities within the parish. Everybody makes a contribution. The Chamber of Commerce makes a lion's share. And so as oversight for what I do, our Chamber of Commerce board, okay, it provides the oversight. So I'm answerable directly to the president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Is there a separate board for the economic development, the 501c3 endeavor?
No. The endeavor is actually a cooperative endeavor between the parish and the chamber,
Okay.
and the municipalities within the parish. But the structure of it is such that the oversight for that endeavor is provided by the Chamber of Commerce
Okay.
Board. And and what I do for Point Capee is basically I'm trying to build a structured form of economic development over there. What's been done before in the past is just look for opportunities and do whatever that you think that you can do. We're trying to divide our time between what are recognized best practices for economic development, which would be business retention and expansion, where you go and you visit your existing businesses. And I can't overstate the importance of that, because one of the things that if you want to grow an economic development organization that you're going to need to do is you're going to need the support of the businesses that you already have. And the way that you get that support is you have to show that you're doing something for them, okay? And then, so if you think about it, as a business owner myself, I can tell you that what I hear from a lot of the businesses is when I go in to see them is that we're so glad to see you here. You know, you're the first person that's ever contacted us. Just, you know, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. You know, you don't get that too often, and so they really like to see you come in. And then you can tell them about some workforce training and some incentives that are available there. If they do an expansion, you can pick up the phone. If you hear about them doing an expansion, you can make sure that they don't miss out on the incentives, because if they don't file a notification form with the state prior to doing whatever expansion that they're going to do, they're not eligible for this expansion.
I'm gonna risk being rude to you.
Sure,
And
go
I
ahead.
don't want to be, because you've come all the way over here. But you're getting now into what ought to be done, and you're absolutely right, I agree with you. But I think right now we've sort of focused on, you know, what we should recommend, what entity or how we should recommend to the police chief we should do it. Do you have questions too, Mr. Bird?
Yeah, I have one. I'm the president of the chamber here, and we don't have the type of funds that you're talking about. So is this in Point Capee through a PAC, or is it through membership? I mean, I don't understand how that funding.
Yeah, about half of the funding comes from the Chamber of Commerce. Our Chamber of Commerce may be a little larger than yours, and that is one of the things that I was talking about when I was talking about why it's important to help the businesses. Because if you really want to grow the EDO over time, you're going to need the businesses in the area to step up, because that's where the real money is at.
Sure.
You know, and so, but first you're going to have to show that you're actually accomplishing something, and that's the reason why I kind of dived into that a little bit as to what, you know, there's a lot of different things besides business and retention and expansion, but it's of all the different structured things that you can do, marketing and attraction, real estate use and redevelopment, blah, blah, blah. It's the most important because that's where the funding is. It's going to be the building block of helping you get the organization up and going. You're going to have to go out like the Baton Rouge Area Chamber has done, and you're going to have to do a capital raising campaign where you're asking for people who have the money to give you the support. And you have to show, if you will support me, these are the things that we're gonna do. And so, you're gonna create a business environment, okay? And if you create a positive enough business environment, that does half of your marketing for you, because the word will get out. West Feliciana is a great place to do business. And there's no better person to market anything, or any product, or any region than word of mouth. And so when the business people who are already here are telling other business people that they know, I'm very happy in West Feliciana, other people are gonna be interested.
The other half, you mentioned about half of the funding comes from the chamber. The other half comes from businesses or from tax revenue?
Well, if you think about half of the funding coming from the Chamber of Commerce, it in essence is really coming from the businesses, right?
Yeah.
So the other half is coming from tax revenue. It's coming from
Yeah,
the
millage.
parish. No, the parish is just committed. Every entity, whether it's a city or a parish, they set aside some funds for economic development. It's a normal part of a budget for most governmental agencies. And whatever amount that they've designated for that, you know, not all of it is given to my endeavor. You know, like, for example, the police jury's total budget for economic development might be $100,000, you know, and their actual contribution to our endeavor is $15,000, okay? And the city of New Roads contributes a like amount. And then the Health Services District actually contributes a little bit. And then we have 3 other smaller towns that
It's a little
contribute.
different here in that we have a dedicated millage for economic development.
You guys have a significant advantage, really, you know, and so I would love to have something like that over in Point Capee. And I think that that may happen over time, but there again, I think that what we're trying to do is we're trying to show the results so that it's easier to ask for the money.
When you first started out, jobs, I got that in all capital letters, that the most important cog in the wheel.
Quality jobs.
For economic development.
Yeah, not just jobs, but quality jobs.
We in this parish, spend a lot of money on tourism. Do you consider tourism one of the cogs in the wheel? Because I noticed it was almost left out on purpose when you were naming all the parts that you consider economic development.
Well, it wasn't left out on purpose. I left it out because for our region, it's probably not going to be a big economic driver. And before you even started, you know that I made it. I didn't even know where you were going, but I made when people say jobs, I always correct them and say quality jobs. Okay. The only thing about tourism is that the jobs that it creates frequently aren't what would be defined as quality jobs. A lot of them it's in the service industry, so they're maids in hotels and waitresses at restaurants, and you know, so the amount of money that they're making, and therefore the boost that it provides to the economy is not as much as some other efforts that you could be. I'm not saying that tourism is not important, because I think that it can be, because one of the effects of tourism that people don't give it a lot of credit for is that if you can draw people into your community, some of the people that you're drawing into your community may perhaps be Bill Gates. And just in passing through, he may say, wow, I really love West Feliciana. I wonder if we can make something happen there. So tourism can be important, and I don't mean to poo-poo it at all, because it's also a big multiplier effect for tourism dollars. So, you know, if you bring a dollar in from the outside, once it lands into your community and recirculates, you know, those are the dollars that are most effective on growing an economy. You know, everybody talks about shop local campaigns and, you know, how important it is to shop locally. Well, that's just keeping a dollar in. But if you can bring a dollar from the outside and make it land in your community like tourism does, it does have a big multiplier effect. So I don't want to say that it's not important, but it's just not as effective in creating quality jobs as some of those other multipliers might be.
I want to ask you a question about this regional approach. We had a little discussion earlier in our thing about that, but how do you deal with a regional approach versus that individual parish impact? Okay, you take Point Capee and West Feliciana, and I'm gonna put East Feliciana, I'm gonna leave Zachary out,
Okay.
okay? If you take those three, and you go out and you recruit, and you draw in, whether it be a widget factory, or the people that sell the widget, or people that build a component for the widget,
Right.
where they land. If it lands in Point Capee, we've taken a regional approach, but how do you address that East and West get nothing and Point Capee gets it all? How do you've got this regional approach, which I like the idea, because yes, we're tied together, and that bridge is gonna let our money go back and forth across the bridge, and it's gonna have people coming through here just so they skip driving through Baton Rouge.
Right.
But how do you approach that benefit is a shared benefit, a regional benefit, and not just an individual benefit?
That is an excellent question, and I can't even begin to tell you how glad I am you asked that. Because that really is going to get down to the heart of why regionalism is so important, is because we're competing against metropolitan areas, right? So
But at the same time, right now, you're competing against West Feliciana Parish.
we're competing against the whole world,
Well, yeah, but in
the whole world.
I'm talking about when you look at the impact that bridge is gonna have, you're
Right.
competing against us, and we're competing against you and East Feliciana, and you're competing against.
And if that's the case, why would I, the Director of Economic Development in Point Capee, be so interested in working with West Feliciana? And I was the one who originally initiated this effort. And the answer is because as a region, I won't, just hear me out. As a region, we're competing for the whole world, okay? Now, you gotta think about a company is looking for a place to do an expansion, and they can land anywhere in the world, because we're in a global economy. So what you're trying to avoid is a process of elimination. You know, because once you're eliminated, you're not on the list anymore. And so, can we do that together as a region better than I can as just Point Capee? Or better than you can just as West Feliciana? So my point is simply to do this. Let's work together as a region to attract the interest. And so let's say that we have some company that's gonna build the turbines for wind turbines here, like just recently happened in southern Louisiana. And they decided that they were looking anywhere in the Gulf South. First, they were looking at the world. Then they said, no, let's keep it in the United States. Then they said, no, let's go to the Gulf South. And then when they got to the Gulf South, would we have been more competitive if we'd been working together as a region? We'd have had more assets, a bigger labor force, we'd had more possibilities. And so they said, well, let's look at that North Capital Area region. Let's just look at it. And then we like that. We're gonna be somewhere in the North Capital Area region. Okay, at that point, we're competing. But we wouldn't have had anything to compete together over if we hadn't worked together to attract the interest first. And there's gonna be some things I went on in Point Capee, and there's gonna be some things you went on in West Feliciana. But my point is that by working together, we'll attract more interest, and a rising tide lifts all boats.
Well, let me ask you this. Could, though, you not have an all or nothing approach when you get to that regional?
Well, you know, I don't think that it is ever an all or nothing approach. You know who the real determiner is at that point? The business. They're gonna do what's in their best economic
Yeah,
interest.
but what I'm talking about is, you have, all right, let's just use an existing business that's kind of held off on its expansion. That's Walmart. You have one in New Roads.
Right.
Walmart has plans to build a supercenter,
I'm working with them every week.
okay? So the question is that we'd like to have them as much as you would. East Feliciana wants them more than we all do,
Right.
okay?
Can't argue with that.
Okay, so the question is that we can sit here and all vie for all of it, or we can sit here and all share equal portions of it.
Well, here's the thing. I go back to, first off, what I said, that, you know, if we all competed together, at least they would be looking at all of us, okay? But because we competed separately, okay, then at the time that I made the initial contact, I wasn't trying to compete for anybody but Point Coupee, okay? And the final determination is made by the company. And so what they're gonna look at is what's best for them, okay? And just because we win on that doesn't mean that you don't win at all. Let's say that on the paper mill, you guys get the paper mill, we get none of that, right? But we actually do, because we get possibly some of those jobs, and you get possibly some of those jobs. And then eventually, you know, when you're talking about, you're going into just the retail sector, okay? Yeah, we have the advantage because we have a bigger retail sector than what you do, okay? And so when you just look at the demographics as far as the number of rooftops, as far as where you're gonna operate, as far as a retail store, we have the advantage right now. But there's things where you have the advantage. And so my underlying point is that by working all together, we can attract more interest to our area and then let the business decide what's in their best interest, because they're gonna do that anyway.
Walter, can I just from experience also tell, I was the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the Regional Chamber of Commerce in New Orleans, okay? And it basically broke up because it was never regional, because people didn't have the philosophy that you did. And here's what really happens. This is another aspect that you should hear. If you don't get together like this, here's what happens. If some manufacturer or some business wants to come in, what happens is this. Somebody says, don't go to Point Coupee because this is bad, that's bad, that's bad. And the people from Point Coupee will then say, don't go to West Feliciana because this is bad, that's bad, and that's bad. And the people from East Feliciana will say, don't go to West Feliciana Point Coupee Parish because this is bad. And I'm telling you, I've experienced this. It happened where down there between particularly Jefferson and Orleans Parish, you can kill each other, okay? Instead of saying, you're a business, you're gonna make money, you wanna make money, you wanna be successful. Here's our panoply of services and goods, okay? They're gonna find out, for instance, they may want to put a manufacturing facility or whatever in Point Coupee and say, well, we got a lot of employees, and you know they want to go to the best schools. We got a bridge coming in. Nobody's gonna gainsay that St. Francisville, the West Feliciana, has the #2 school system in. So you say, you know, we got schools right nearby. I mean, that's the way it works if you do it right. Okay, now I'll shut up. I just wanted to.
That's an excellent point, and I agree with what you said 100%. And that is one of the things that by starting this initiative before the bridge got completed, I'm gonna get right to you, I promise, is that we want to make this positive. You know, we do. I want the people in Point Coupee to talk favorably about West Feliciana. I like the people in West Feliciana. We want to work together as a region, okay? And then let the businesses then at the end, because that's the way you win. You know, I spent a lot of years in sales and marketing, and one of the people that I really like, just because he's a Southerner like us, is Zig Ziglar, if you guys have heard of him. And you know, one of the things Zig says is that you can get everything you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And so you get a lot, you catch more flies with honey, all this wisdom and all these truisms, they're really true. And if we work together, I go back to what I said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think that we will be far and away better off. And because we're doing it before a lot of other communities are doing it, we'll have a head start on it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I think all three regions that we're referring to, being Point Coupee, West Feliciana, East Feliciana, have a void in a labor force, trained labor force. And I think from an economic standpoint, it's a good that training and dollars that through economic endeavors at the state are going to see a larger impact by trying to go regional and train and bring people in, because it doesn't do y'all a lot of good to have jobs where the dollars are spent in another part of the city or outside your parish, and we know what's happened with our economic dollars and its buying power from this point. So, back to the regional jobs, you're gonna get a lot more impact from the state and economic development dollars, federal dollars, workforce dollars for training. It's going to trickle down to a lot more impact if y'all can sense a way to work together, which you all are, talking, you know. And I like the idea that Walter came up with one day, and I think we don't want to vary from it. And that was a tax endeavor for a district possibly that the corridor creates. The link between Point Capay and West Feliciana and on into East Feliciana could become a district, taxing district where equally shared in some respects within that one taxing district. That's an endeavor that could be pursued to help Walter and Point Capay and missions that we working together within this, to create opportunity within this district where we can share economically for each of the areas based on some percentage from a tax base. That's the end. I mean, I think it can go further than just we're in a region and we're gonna shake hands and we're gonna be good buddies. No, it can the next step you can take is create a taxing district as created by the bridge economy, if everybody can agree on it, and then you can share in those tax dollars. Walter, that was a great thought, and I've carried it on into other entities around the state that's done this. So it's a good idea. We've got some wheels that will could put that in place. That's in.
Okay, let's see if we can conclude with Mr. Byrd, because we do have another part of the agenda. Anybody else, any other questions? Thank you so much for coming here, and you know, some of the things you said were music to my ears, having been through the reverse.
I appreciate you guys taking the time and having me here, and I really appreciate West Feliciana's support in working with Point Capay on this project. I think that really it is the way to go. Just elaborating on what you said, when you're going, whether you're going to go to a tax or whether you're going to go to the businesses, whatever funding source you're going to go to, you're going to need to be able to show them what it is that they're going to get for their money. And so I think this initiative is one of the things that you'll be able to point to and say, this is the vision and plan and the goals that we have. Will you back us on it? And whatever funding source, whether it be businesses, where you're doing a capital raising campaign and you're going to the businesses, Chamber of Commerce, municipalities, the parish government, or creating a new taxing entity, you got to show them what it is that they're going to get for their money. And I want to see if I can help you do that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, how do you get funded for SET, for the SET initiative? How is it funded?
Well, we applied for the grant. It's primarily a technical assistance grant. Okay, so we're getting help from USDA and Rural Development and some of those other agencies that I mentioned in that handout to help us craft the plan and provide a structure for creating the plan.
So you don't actually have funding for that at the moment?
No, but here's the important thing to think about. This is being administered by USDA and Rural Development. Anybody who does much in economic development for rural communities knows that that's one of your best funding sources.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would think that when we get done with this, that if we go through it and do it right, they will back us and they will say, hey, we helped them to create this plan. We think we ought to fund it.
And what USDA office are you using?
Alexander.
See, you're out of a meet.
That's just what I was thinking.
That's the main office. I mean, this is, you know,
Well,
this
your region-
is run by the state director.
Oh, okay, so it's not
Clarence
regional.
Hawkins, the main guy, is behind this.
So we're not working the regional side of this thing because each side of the river goes to a different location?
Yeah, we're going a step above that.
Okay.
Yeah, they've already,
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that very, very much.
Very helpful.
Dan, let me sneak one last question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Real quick.
Go ahead, sure.
Do you have a trade school in Point Coupee?
We did.
Juvenile.
While,
They hadn't changed the name of it.
Well, they just changed it to Capital Area.
Yeah, I was
It's still Jumonville campus.
just on the issue of funding too, I went to the police jury office this morning and confirmed a couple of things. One, the millage that we have for economic development, it's a millage that is dedicated to that. And it's been renewed several times. It's going to go out of existence unless it's renewed in 2012. It presently brings in $158,000. The Tourism Commission gets $72,000 of it, and BRAF, the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, is getting $5,000 a month for 6 months. Okay, so that's just for your info. Glenn, in case you're interested in this, the chamber, when we were regional chamber in New Orleans, the way we handled the contributions to economic development arm was that you had members who paid dues, just dues to belong. And then you had your businesses, your particular bigger businesses, who made investments of larger sums, and those were the funds used for economic development.
And I guess any fundraisers that you would have along the way?
Absolutely not.
You did
No,
not use that?
No, that was separate. No, that was separate. Okay, now, I was happy to see,
As a correction, it's 258
258,
from the millage.
258.
I think I heard 158.
Yeah, you did, and I was wrong.
That's all.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
We got, I made a suggestion at the end of the last meeting, which was followed up by James Woods, by suggesting a type of entity that we could recommend to the police jury, who would be, which would be an entity that could hire, set policies, and have a mission for economic development. Is that the appropriate place? I'd kind of like to start there, but I'm not going to start there unless if somebody has a better idea. It did get a lot of responses back and forth. You want to start with that? James, unfortunately, is not here tonight, but Jack was very interested in that. I think Walter also in Hollis had some suggestions or some modifications. So why don't we start there, and anybody take over as to what the suggestion. Did everybody see it? I think it went to everybody. And what I tried to do, and I had Rolanda to send to you, I got that suggestion, and every response I tried to put down in one document so that everybody would have for tonight a whole background on this thing. So somebody start. Somebody's the hero.
I'll kick it off.
Walter.
The thing that I think we all kind of, or the thing that I've taken from this is that what this group brings together, and I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the makeup of the group, is that you bring together individuals from the parish, just plain old John Q. Fulton people. But then you also bring together the people the organizations that have to have an interest in this, because it's what funds their operation, and that being the sheriff, the school board, the town of St. Francisville, the police jury, the hospital board, the fire district. Because without economic development and economic growth, we see what happens to our tax base. And you can only raise taxes so many times. But with that, we've brought together these groups now to have the discussion, but I believe that one of the problems we had, the failure we've had in the past, is that you didn't have the involvement of those groups to push forward, to go, when you bring in XYZ Corporation, you can have the Steve Joneses of the world to tell them about how great things are in this parish and why you come here, but nobody can sell our school system better than our school superintendent. Nobody can explain how our sheriff's office functions better than our sheriff's office. Nobody can come in and explain to them what the parish offers in utility services and what they can do for them, or fire protection, than somebody from that organization. And my thinking behind my vision of this is you take a board of similar makeup of what we have today, and you have those people who are there to support whoever you hire to do the function. Because one of the things that I kind of saw that handicapped Steve on a lot of occasions was he never had the backup from somebody else. He could bring people in, but then it was Steve having to make the sale, where it should have been the parish helping close that deal. And if, let's say you bring in a group of 15 people or 5 people, how does one person truly show them the attention they need, where when you have a board of this size that you can go out and draw 1 or 2 people from to help you out, I believe that kind of organization would allow for a lot better result. You have him out there fishing, okay? And he's got to have some brim hooks and he's got to have some whale hooks out. But when he gets one on the line, if you're going to land him, sometimes that big fish you got to fight with. And, I just don't see where he got a lot of support from the organization he was with. And I believe that's where an organization with people that have some skin in the game put up a better fight. Because, Hollis over there sits there watching his budget do this, but the cost of educating kids do that. Hollis knows we want to land this guy.
He's gonna be very active.
That's right.
He's gonna be getting somebody in there, or he's going to have to lay off.
I
Ain't
mean-
nothing worse than having to lay people off. Same thing with fire, school, everybody. And they got more invested. And further on what you were saying earlier, the development board or committee we had before, I was in meetings and they would ask me about something, and they would have to ask Steve Jones, because they were not actively
Correct.
involved.
And there's going to be a point where one of the things that I think we discussed early on in this process was you still have to have that person. And the reason why I say that you contract with that person is he can go sign the confidentiality agreements, okay? And then if he brings, somebody from the port in to have conversations with, they can be limited in what their part of it is. But you have to have that ability to have those confidential meetings and negotiations and have that conversation of what you can do for them and go back and forth with. I mean, if everybody he talks to in Point Capee Parish, that's a public record, well, I promise you somebody in Everville is going to be trying to take everybody he talks to.
That's
So
exactly
people
why you
want-
form an independent agency.
That's right.
So you're not subject to that.
But there's my thing though. It cannot be just independent. We've been down that road and we saw where independent got us. Because as long as they were self-appointing, they served their own interests.
That's right.
And we, the old saying, if those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I know Mr. Glenn he addressed the issue of the chamber being more involved in it. And I'd welcome the chamber to be more involved in it, but the problem I have with that is that everybody wants to protect their little fiefdom, okay? And you take a business in this parish and they sit there and see you attracting somebody, well, that might be bad for them, and they're going to throw their hands up, oh, we don't want that.
And they'll kill it.
And, yeah,
Right there.
That's what
so,
happened with the last one.
Yeah.
The
that's
difference in
right.
our chamber's parish-wide.
To that consideration, that's what this is.
My only thing about that is that you see that mill's not borne by the police jury, it's borne by the people of the parish. So whether you take,
And it's dedicated.
if
But
you
only
take
through
so,
212.
but if you take money from the sheriff, and you take money from the hospital, and you take money from the school board and the fire, you're still getting from the same pocket, and that's the taxpayers of this parish. So where the money comes from, our millage just seems to be a more reasonable thing. Now, I prefer a sales tax because everybody pays it, but in this case, I don't think you can do it on a sales tax.
I wouldn't think we could.
No.
At this point. It was just that the involvement, sharing some of the costs in some way, because when the millage goes away in 12, do you renew it? Can you renew it? All of these things.
I think the voters will renew it if the voters see a benefit from it. But as long as the voters see no benefit from it, they're gonna tell you no.
Sure.
put it this way, same thing with the sheriff's office, same thing with the fire district. If we don't do our job, they're gonna put the big X on no. And, you know, they cut you off. Now, the other thing that that my suggestion is that I don't see the purpose here of having an economic development tool and a tourism. The whole purpose of both of them is to sell West Feliciana Parish. Now,
How is that millage written though?
It can be divided either way. Nothing.
Yeah, that's what I checked, that's what I
Is it
checked
dedicated
on.
so much to tourism?
No,
No, not at all.
no.
So nothing's dedicated
Now, and-
except for economic development?
And I believe that you have to, when you name it, it has to have the word tourism in it, because one of the things is there are things out there that come from the Lieutenant Governor's office through state tourism, that you have to be a tourism commission to get, but, you know, you can be anything in tourism that you want to be. You know, how you name it and what its function is, as long as it serves the purpose of also doing tourism. And this idea, and I put this in my thing where, and this isn't a shot at our current tourism commission, but we appoint that board different than we appoint anything else. We say that you have to have a recommendation from a nonprofit that's involved in tourism to be on the tourism commission. Well, is that the Fox Garden and Hen House? I mean, I have a problem when we don't just say that firemen can be on the fire board, we don't just say that doctors can be on the hospital board, or that school teachers are gonna be on the school board. You know, everybody has a common interest, and my thinking behind it is, if our economic development person and our tourism person can't come to 9 thinking people and explain to them this is what our approach to promoting tourism is for the whole parish, then they don't have a very good program. I mean, I have a problem when we say that, okay, we're gonna hand you this money and you go promote your business. It's like I told them one time, let's have the private fire investigator commission, and let's go collect some tax money and let's promote fire investigators, okay? Because I'd really like to not have to pay marketing money. Let y'all market me. All right, y'all's turn.
Let me see if I can sort of move the ball forward by asking, and I liked the phrase that Walter used, skin in the game. If, assuming for the moment, that we create some entity or suggest that an entity be created, I don't know which it'll be, but is there anyone here who would not think that these entities that were mentioned by Walter, and I'll go over the sheriff's, Office of Superintendent of Education, the Port Commission, the hospital, and the fire should not be represented on, let's say, the board of that?
I think you have to include the town, but
I don't
Okay.
see why other entities in the parish that are funded by the parish need to be represented on the board. I mean,
Like what?
well, like any one of the ones you just mentioned.
but none of those are funded by the
Yeah.
police jury. They all are independent taxing bodies.
See, they have their own tax funds that are dedicated to them. The sheriff does, the school does.
Not support.
The Port does not. The Port does
Not-
Full commission is not the full
But I thought the hospital doesn't either, does it?
Oh, yeah, it
The
does.
Yes.
hospital calls its own tax and has to
It
pass
has
its
its
own.
own?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that said, let me still push I'm waiting to hear you. So Glenn's given his opinion, and anybody else on this?
I'm curious, the old commission and the failures of the past, I'm not as familiar with, so y'all forgive my ignorance. But,
Are you talking about the Community Development Foundation?
Yeah.
Okay.
and anything else of the past that was deemed a failure to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish now, or gonna recommend to try to accomplish. Were any of these that we call the school board, the sheriff's office, the police jury,
No.
any of those involved in that?
No. They were all self-appointed, self-sustaining, self-served. I had the last part.
Good definition.
Yeah.
Word.
May I quote you?
The reason why I ask, And that's not necessarily that I'm opposed to it, I'm not, I'm just for sake of argument or discussion. They're gonna be considered resources whenever we're trying to pull in economic development, regardless. Regardless if they're on it or not, we're still gonna use them. And he's gonna wanna be a resource, and everybody's gonna wanna be a resource because we need the money. Parish needs the money. So aside from that, they don't, my thinking is they don't have to be on the board to be the resource, because that's a given, because we're trying to pull people in. From that perspective, it's not needed, that's what I'm thinking. And you correct me if I'm wrong, it's not needed that they're on the board. What's needed is that we make sure we pull them in and they're available for the resource. Now, but from your perspective, I think what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that because they got skin in the game, they don't need these funds, they're gonna be more active than somebody that we're just pulling out of
I think that,
the parish. Is that what, is that?
That's what
is
he's
that-
saying, because they will be more apt to be deeply involved.
Right.
if they're involved in the first place.
Yes, because they have to be, or they're gonna cease at the level we're doing business today.
Not all of them.
Well, they're to some extent.
Well, you're not gonna cease the sheriff's department.
No,
Oh, he
he's-
cut down in the number of people he
You're
got.
gonna still have a police jury. You're still gonna have a fire department.
My thinking, David, is this, is that if you take those people and you put them on there to be involved in economic development, then they take the mindset of, hey, we're supposed to be involved in economic development. Because I can tell you, and nothing against Hollis's predecessor, okay? I watched him come to a meeting one time, and his main interest was, how much money is it gonna bring to us? It wasn't, what do I do to get them here?
That's right.
Okay, because I've watched people make this argument one time about, oh, well, you don't give up this, you don't give up that, because that's a lot of money. Let's say you make some kind of concession to somebody that is $50 million. Okay? Okay, well, you can concede $50 million to them, but if they're gonna bring in $150 million more, but you gave up 50 instead, so you got 150 instead of 200. No, you gave up 50 to get 150 instead of getting nothing.
Right.
And as long as they have that buy-in, they're gonna, or as long as they're involved from the beginning,
Wants
they
to see
understand.
development, and we, you know, and it's hard to put a criteria next to it, but says, hey, I'm involved already because of this, I'm already involved because of this, and I want to see development coming. The biggest part of our issue that we have in this parish is we know that majority of people want it, but how do we get those people to help us bring it? And I don't know, I'm just curious, I'm asking the question, these people that's on these, or whoever they're gonna, sending a representative, what's gonna validate that they're wanting the same thing? Because if you bring people from these, and they know that they're gonna get it, they're gonna benefit from it, what's to say that they're gonna participate at the level that you're saying that they're gonna participate at? And that's just my question.
Tom, you want to respond to that?
As a facilitator, we've had for the first time, and I'm making this statement out there, the support of the school board from being involved, the support of the sheriff being involved, the support of the fire department being involved in the structure. I would only hope that that would be a better tool to move forward with, because one thing that came out of here that is so critical of this right here, it's worth every penny we paid for it. A massive population get their information word of mouth. And if every group in this parish is working towards economic development, that would be the one message that went forward, hopefully, out of that group. That's all, you know, that.
And that's good, but the people that was called, and we got that, majority of, we could say maybe 95% of those people that was called is the general public, not people serving on these boards. And that,
Well, that's.
I'm just saying that the mandating, I'm questioning, and I'm asking us to think about it, the mandating of these, is it is it really gonna accomplish what we think it's gonna accomplish? And if we say yes, then let's go forward.
Well, and I don't think that anybody is gonna say we should confirm that tonight. What I was gonna do is if this part of the conversation is finished, and trust me, y'all know me now, okay? I like to move things, I wanna be courteous, but I wanna, keep going forward. If we can put that sort of on the table for a second, I would, and if nobody has any more questions or statements on it, I was gonna say, okay, now, suppose you have or you don't have these people, who else should be,
Can I ask? one-
Sure, go ahead. This is-
One of the questions I think that was put forth to us by the jury to answer was it a body to do economic development and a tourism organization? So my question is what is the consensus of this group? Should that be two different functions or one function?
That's kind of a different question, but go ahead.
I don't think one, y'all go together. It saves money
Say
in the
one
long run
function.
and do the same thing.
Saves an awful lot of money, and it probably eliminates a few
Do
people
you-
that maybe shouldn't be in that function.
Do you have one group over here doing economic development and one group over here doing tourism, or do you have one group doing both?
See, I have a problem with us here, we're so fragmented. Or I think so. I think you gotta get tourism and economic development, you gotta get it all in the same jar. And, and then how does, we got a great group over here, the St. Francisville Area Foundation, and, we got so many groups, and we're working, how do we get everybody between the traces pulling in the same direction? And we don't have somebody breaking out.
And Leonard, you speak for me on that, and I think the same way. First of all, personally, tourism, in my opinion, and I think this is probably pervasive, is a facet of economic development. What Leonard is saying, I've seen in the last 2 years too much of, and I saw it a lot where I came from. And that is too fragmentation, not knowing what he's doing, she's doing, and whatever. And if we can have an entity who looks at the whole picture and gets requests from everybody and help from everybody, I personally believe, you can see what my philosophy is, I personally believe that we let, as Mr. Byrd says, it's like all ships rise with the rising tide. So the answer is, yeah, I think tourism is part of economic development. I don't think it's separate, because I think what you do is you fragment again. So
One of the things that I watch happen here repeatedly and just drives me crazy is that we have this athletic facility out here that several months out of the year attracts all these people to these baseball tournaments. And those people come here during the day and they buy a few concessions and they watch their ball games. And in the evening, between games or between days of the tournament, they go somewhere else. Okay? Now, because when they called for a hotel reservation at the time, we had one. Now, the problem was that tourism was not sitting there thinking about, they've drawn these people in, how do we keep these people here and get them to stay here at our bed and breakfasts? Okay, now, with that, we've done a bad job of marketing West Feliciana. Now, that individual business, they have to do their own job, I think, of marketing to that group. The group was brought here, now they have to figure out what number is good for them to fill their rooms up. Same thing with that restaurant or whatever other business. You brought them here. Now, let's sell them to stay here. But I believe when you bring this all together, that person at Parks and Recreations goes to one contact and says, look, because I can tell you, I went to my nephew's swimming swim meet this weekend, LSU at the natatorium, there's 2,500 people there swimming. And for every 20, for each of those 2,000 kids that are diving in the pool every 30 minutes, seem like, there's a parent or two and a sibling or two that all stayed in Baton Rouge. Now, we've had discussions up here over the years about building a swimming pool, building an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So that park out there has plenty of potential. And, there was discussion about having it at the school, having it at the park. I don't care where you have it so it can be used and use it as something to bring some tourism.
That kind of thing will come.
And that's, but that's my thing is that
what we're trying to
if
figure out.
you have one group that's looking at the good of all, they can go and sell that idea as an economic development tool, as a tourism tool, but not a splinter group saying, well, that's not the kind of tourism we want. We want people to come look at pretty birds and old houses and, stay at my bed and breakfast or whatever. It's got to be the best for the parish, and I don't think that's what we're doing right now.
I want one thing to say, Mr. Jack had a suggestion too, I'd like to hear him. Well, no, I mean, we're putting out
Contrary to a lot
ideas
of
now.
what's been discussed. I don't like government by committee. And if it's gonna be a committee, it's gotta be a whole lot smaller than this group here, I
Well,
think.
when you say a government by committee, and I read
Well,
the
this
email.
is an arm of
too many.
government.
Well,
This
excuse
is
me.
what we doing.
Excuse me, what are we doing now? You see, my understanding of James's suggestion was not that this group was going to do economic development, okay? But that they would represent an entity, call it a 50c3, who would, in fact, have a mission and set policies and retain somebody to do it. I agree with you. You can't have a.
Oh, yeah.
But if all of these people have skin in the game, and you have some others who are very interested, and they set a policy and have the person or persons respond with regard to that policy, that's what I thought the whole thing was about.
Well, I think
But
a
listen.
person hired, and I agree with that. Just like you.
I don't think
you've got a person that's hired
Excuse me,
for
Walter,
the job.
please, Jack, go.
That person needs some kind of direction or some kind of guidance. 501c3 seems fine with me. It seems a very good independent way
Mhm.
of doing it. And then you can throw in the millage that we have, which is over $200,000 a year, which is a hell of a good
Sure.
start. That's before you ever go to the chamber, before you ever go to one of these organizations
But
and ask them for 2% or
Nobody's
3% of their funding.
nobody's talking about that right now. We're not talking about anything other than the funding that we have not going, that was nice, Mr. Byrd said it, and I said what was done in the New Orleans area, but all we're talking about right now is what you would have in the form of, what we could recommend to the police jury, or what we would do and give to the police jury in order to have an economic development home.
Understand?
Look,
I just,
Wait,
I think this is too many people to be dealing with.
okay, so
I think it
you,
needs to be pared down considerably.
but would you still have some sort of an entity like?
We're talking about, what, 17 people here?
No, excuse me. Let me backtrack. I'm trying to keep this on a track. No. My first question to the committee was, if we have an entity, and let's assume that for the second, okay? Who should be basically in that entity? And let's call it the board. Now, the first suggestion is, and it was made by Walter, and I think also James, you should have these entities represented because they have skin in the game. Okay, and then we had comments about that. Now my next question is who else should be on that board? Now, there's one thing I agree with Jack on, and that is, once you get too many people, you just absolutely lose everything. But, that said, the question I have that I'd like to put on the table is, who else should be?
Well,
Who else?
Yeah.
Makes it even bigger.
It does. Well, right
So
now,
you say, who else?
right now, I didn't hear anybody, in fact, I didn't hear you suggest that the only person that suggested somebody should not be on, or maybe you should add one, was Glenn when you said the town, right?
Town, and I also think the chamber's gotta be.
Okay.
I just
Well-
think the best qualified.
Okay, hang on for a second. We're talking about right now representation. We're talking about representation of various departments, agencies, and so forth. The town is an agency. If you want to get into who else should be represented, you can say somebody from the chamber, somebody from this or that. Am I being clear enough right now?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Glenn, how does this sound to you? What my suggestion was 5 individuals and then 4 representatives from the, one representative from the 4 taxing bodies. If out of those 5 individuals, one of those was somebody that the town put on that board. So in other words, the jury would put up 4, the town would put up 1. Now, I have no problem with the chamber making recommendations or whatever, and I'm not saying that I would have a problem with the chamber making a recommendation to be approved by. But my thought is that when you get past 9 people, I agree with Jack. It's
Oh,
too big.
I think that's way too many.
And 9 is probably
Yeah.
pushing it a little bit, but I like the 4, I like the idea of the 4 taxing bodies. And I don't wanna see 7 where each one of these people get to pick one, because God only knows what you're gonna get. Okay? When you make them come to a consensus on a group, they have to make a decision.
But don't forget, you still may get that.
Oh, you still make,
Because
well,
all we're doing is making a recommendation.
correct.
And these people that sit up here rarely take recommendations. They do it their way.
Well, even with your taxing groups, there's no guarantee that the person that is appointed by each taxing group to be on this board is gonna take that as an interest.
Well,
You know, I mean, and now, I disagree, I disagree with what I just said with what we have here today. But that's not to say that Leonard's gonna stay on that group. He may appoint somebody out of the hospital board, or that the sheriff may appoint somebody, different than Randy being here. Or, or Hollis may not be here, he may appoint somebody else. I mean, we may have, it's gonna really depend on the individual that's here, is basically
Correct.
what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I love the hospital, I'm gonna be here. All that's love is a
Unless
school
you're in the
board.
unless you're in the hospital, he's gonna be.
And my reason for saying that the chamber has to be represented is that we are representing the business community. Now, the individual that's here can be anybody. It's certainly not gonna be me, because I'm retiring as president
They'll turn in
as we speak.
well, resume and,
Now,
go.
one of
shake
the
that.
things though that James put in his thing and I agreed with was that when you start appointing those 5 people, that some of them should be business owners.
Right.
And if the chamber wants to put up names of business owners, to be considered along with other people, I think the chamber has an input. Whether the chamber has a position on that body, I don't know. I'm saying that I believe that the chamber is gonna be an asset to this organization.
Since we are on the chamber, and since they are a private body as opposed to a public agency or body, let's hear some more about that specific suggestion. Anybody else have comments about whether or not? And let me tell you, this is generally done from my experience. If you set this up, and I'm not suggesting you set it up this way, but this is the way you would set it up. You would say, this is a board made up of X numbers, and one of whom is the president of the Chamber of Commerce or his or her delegate. Okay? I mean, so the question becomes, should a chamber representative be on? And I'm gonna cut it short and say that's the board of this organization, because as I see it, and I think everybody's pretty much the same on it. What we're talking about is a board. We're talking about a board who would direct things, a board who would set the mission, set the policies, and make whoever they hire responsive. So that said, chamber, should the chamber be an actual voting board member on
Let
the
me
board?
ask Glenn a question
Sure.
about the chamber.
Go ahead.
Makeup or membership.
Mhm.
What percent of the chamber membership comes from people in St. Francisville versus the parish?
Well,
I know
the
the name of
majority
it
of,
is
the
the
majority
San
of,
Francisville Chamber of
yeah,
Commerce.
yeah, the majority of it comes from the city limits of St. Francisville, because when you look at the businesses outside of the town of St. Francisville, they almost don't exist.
Well, they'll already be represented,
Well,
then
then-
by a dedicated one from the city.
That's what I was getting ready to
But
say,
land
if you're
don't
gonna
count
take somebody
individuals.
from the town, why don't we let that be the chamber person?
Well, because the town's not gonna agree with that.
Well, this group may not agree with the
Yeah.
other position.
What?
I say this group may not agree with the other.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, the town
It
itself
seems
is
like
not
that's
gonna agree
putting
with
too
that.
many people from the town
Yeah.
versus the parish.
The town's not been very
The
interested
town
in what
is
we're
the
doing.
tail that's been wagging the dog for a long, long time.
And it's still there.
It's still there, that's right, but it's the tail that's wagging the dog.
Right.
And we've got to do something about that and make this the parish. I mean, this is a parish-wide effort. We're not going to develop economic development and get a whole bunch of new businesses or some industrial parks or whatever it may be. It's not going to come into St. Francisville. They're going to come to West Feliciana Parish.
And let's
And we
remember
don't
also,
need to over-represent the town, is what I'm saying.
let us also remember that we're setting this up for the future continuance. This is long term. And that's something else that has to be considered. You know, at some point, you're gonna retire, I think. So we gotta think about the hospital board at some point being led by somebody else who may appoint somebody else.
Well, I
I'm
also
saying,
think
that's an example.
we're gonna need financial support down the road. And I like the idea of what Scott said, that the chamber kicks in X amount of money for economic development. And I think our chamber needs to work towards that very same thing. Now, if we don't have a representative on the board, then obviously we're not going to kick any money in. And I think, looking for the future, that's where we ought to be going. I mean, I think we ought to have a representative on the board. It'd
Glenn,
be
I'm gonna
easier
say something
for us
right
to
now
come up with money.
that is not very nice, but I kind of take that as a threat. I really do.
Why?
That if you don't give us a seat at the board, then we're not going to support your effort.
Well, I'm not saying that.
And that's basically what you
I-
just said.
But that's exactly what I said.
I know.
Because the business person is not gonna support it if they don't have some say in what's going on.
Glenn, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
They've not supported growth in the past,
Who has it?
the chamber.
Oh, yes, the chamber has.
I didn't see them helping us, trying to get some
Helping who?
infrastructure put in, trying to get taxes passed to get some infrastructure.
I don't understand why you're saying that. Well,
Well,
certainly
I
we did.
I didn't see this.
I didn't see any signs of
I
it
didn't
in the
know.
chamber.
I saw the people that work
Okay,
in the
excuse me,
chamber.
Hollis,
did not
wait,
do it.
wait, somebody who's not spoken, Hollis.
I like the voting members as it's been presented. Are there some challenges with?
Wait, excuse me, wait, you say it's being presented.
Okay,
I
I'm
know
sorry.
you-
I'm so sorry.
There may
Okay.
be, yeah. who-
The 11 members.
Okay.
Okay, I know it seems large, I apologize. Seems
Okay.
large, but I think in the beginning, for everybody to have some skin in the game, it's a good term. For everybody to have good communication, for this entity to have credibility. Because of the networking situation that we have, the communication challenges that we have in the parish. If we're all there, and you've got a lot of people, although we may not always agree, and sometimes our board meetings may go along with tangents, okay? At the end of the day, when people walk out, I think a majority, there are gonna be individuals always, but I'm not gonna go there. But majority of people, I think, can come to some type of unified approach and discussion, and you've heard it from every angle, and I think that's so important. And I think there's a lot of exciting things that could come about on this. Because like when I look at this group, one of the things that we're looking at doing is making a promotional CD for the school system. I don't know if you know it or not, but when you leave West Feliciana and you go out there, yeah, we're number 2 in the state, but a majority of the people in the state don't know that. As a matter of fact, I would tell you it's just as much of an assumption of the opposite, that we're not as good as we are. Because they confuse us with other districts. They don't know. A lot of people that come up here to visit me across the river to Point Copian, and they call me and go, Milton, where are you guys at? And I'm like, no, this is not like East Baton Rouge and West Baton Rouge, okay? You got to come across that ferry again. We're on this side of the river. But the reason I say that to you, and I went off on a tangent to explain this to you, it's about communication and marketing. And that's what this approach is. And so, like I tell you about the CD, Well, everybody in that room ought to have some skin in the game, because when I tell you I'm doing a promotional CD, and partially why we're doing it is to recruit teachers. But I know it's much bigger than that, and it's gonna be pretty cool when we create it. It's gonna be done by kids. But if I go down to you guys and say, here's a stack of these CDs, maybe you should give these out when businesses come in and talk to you. And I go to tourism, and we just leave a few of those at the Myrtles when people are coming through. But if I talk to everybody about it, everybody walks away with a little something extra. If we leave some of these groups out, they never get a chance to have that. And the one thing that people can appreciate, because I may walk out of here one day and disagree with the group. But you know what? If a majority of people with this 11 board said this is where we're going, in my mind, if I've had skin in the game and I'm being true, to myself, I got to go with that board. And I got to walk out there in the public and say, you know what? Hey, I disagree with them, but on the majority of things, the board, and it's their opinion, and the board, no one individual is bigger than an 11-member board. So therefore, I have skin in the game and has credibility. So I like that fact that the more people that you have, it does create challenges. But again, with the board, you create a mission statement, you set up those activities that align to that mission statement, you pull it all back in together, and then when you have a person that's going to run it for you, then it's their job to do day-to-day operations. But when they come to see us all, it's all of us together. I mean, that was long, but I waited to the end.
No, that's good.
No, and it
And-
makes sense, Hollis, and it's just like this committee. I mean, we're gonna have disagreement on the way things ought to happen. But when we walk out of here on the last day and Sam makes a report to the police jury, it's gonna be the committee's decision.
And with that in mind,
And we can
Jack,
all stick together, I'm sure.
And you were, I think, a little bit either negative or skeptical about what the police jury would do with our recommendation. Let me say this, I've been over there twice, and this is not to patronize you. I have said that this is a very good committee. People are interested, you're knowledgeable, we care, otherwise why would you be here right now instead of being home with a drink of martini in front of you, okay? All right, which we're gonna have in about 2 minutes, because I'm trying to make these meetings 90 minutes. Okay, not never. So what I'd like to do is to end the meeting by suggesting that this discussion be continued in the framework of more discussion about who should be on the board of such an entity. Okay? Now this will really get you. It'll be a very good meeting. And I'm not going to be here. So I've asked Jack to chair the meeting. Okay. I hope everybody approves of that. We have as you know, we've all agreed to have meetings on the first and third Mondays of the month. That would be the 7th, I think, is the next meeting. I will not be here, but I'll be back on the one for the 21st. So with that said, unless I'm being rude to you, Tom, you want to wind up something? Okay, shoot.
Your police jury members are very appreciative of what this group is doing.
I think so.
And I want y'all to understand that. That's number one. Number two, as I sent y'all an email, I'm trying to meet with each one of them just to go through this information, question by question, not change their validity, not trying to influence them in any way. Just look at what this says, so that when the presentation comes in February of this document, there's not a wavering thought, well, it doesn't represent my district. So I've taken it as an educational method to explain to them what's in here, question by question, no influence on the decision of what this says. Look at what it says for your district and look at what it says overall. If you have some concerns, ask the question.
Okay.
But at this point, they're very supportive of what this has come out to be.
And I'm gonna, on February the 8th, I'm gonna report officially at the public meeting at Jack's suggestion. David, you have a comment?
Yes, for whatever reason, I misunderstood, and I'm glad that you clarified what the committee or what this board is gonna wind up doing. I was under the impression that they were gonna be the ones actually involved in the, so I misunderstood. Having said that, I want to say this one thing while we walk away from this, thinking about who should be on the board. Not only is it all these that's been the school board, the sheriff's office, police jury, the fire district, hospital board, and the town of St. Francisville, but we got to think about it from affected areas. They're going to be affected by whatever economic development says for us. Not only are they going to be affected, the tourism community is going to be affected, the St. Francisville Chamber of Commerce is going to be affected, the tax assessor is going to be affected, the port commission, and the 911 community. All these people are going to be affected. And the people that's going to be affected is the ones that's going to have the buy-in. Because let me just simply say this. The more economic development that we have come in, it's going to affect the school system. How many kids are going to be here? It's going to affect the hospital. How many people are going to get sick? It's going to affect all of these people. So, yes, I'm kind of reneging on what we said earlier. I'm taking it back on what I said earlier. I believe these people should be on there. I also believe that more than what we have listed as
Okay, well,
the
that's,
main ones should be on there because it's going to affect them.
you can open up at the next meeting, because that'll be the subject. Be good. Now, one final thing. Glenn brought me this today, and I'm gonna get Rolanda to send it to you, but it's the listing of the economic development entities around the state. Of course, West Feliciana is not on it. Okay,
We'll
so,
ensure that we're put on it.
excuse me?
We'll get on with that.
I understand it, but I'm gonna get everybody, to get Rolanda to give everybody a copy of this. Did I hear somebody say move to adjourn? Yes. Jack, move to adjourn. Anybody second? Was any objection? There being none, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.